My husband and I have struggled with fertility for many years. It has been a long and painful journey, filled with hope and heartache. There have been so many times when we tried everything we could to get pregnant. We hoped and prayed with all our hearts, doing everything possible to make it happen. And when I finally did get pregnant, we would feel so happy and full of hope, thinking this time would be different. But sadly, those moments of joy didn't last. Time after time, the pregnancies ended in miscarriage. Each loss left us feeling crushed and empty. It's impossible to explain how painful it is to have your dreams taken away over and over again. Every day we carry the weight of that sadness. Our hearts have been broken more times than we can count, and the pain never really goes away. Last year, my husband and I made one of the hardest decisions of our lives. We chose to stop trying to get pregnant. After everything we had been through, we just couldn't keep putting ourselves through the emotional roller coaster anymore. Every time we got our hopes up, we tried to believe that maybe this time it would finally work, and every time it ended in loss. It shattered us all over again. The constant cycle of hope, followed by grief, was wearing us down. It felt like we were stuck in a painful loop that we couldn't escape. No matter how strong we tried to be, the heartbreak kept piling up. We realized that we had reached our limit. It was all becoming too much for our hearts and minds to handle. Letting go of the dream was heartbreaking, but continuing down the same path was slowly breaking us even more. So instead of continuing down the painful path of trying to conceive, my husband and I made a new decision, one that gave us hope again. We've always known deep in our hearts that we were meant to be parents. We've always had so much love to give, and we still wanted to share that love with a child. That's when we began to seriously consider adoption. It wasn't an easy process. There was a mountain of paperwork, long waiting periods, and moments where we felt unsure or worried it might never happen. But we held on. We kept believing that when the time was right, the right child would find their way to us. And then, just last month, everything changed. We were blessed with a baby girl. She came into our lives like a miracle, like a little angel we had been waiting for all along. Her biological mother made the brave and selfless choice to give her up because she's still very young and not able to raise a child. We are so grateful for her decision, and we carry so much respect for her. For us, this baby girl is more than just a child. She is the answer to all the prayers we whispered through tears. She is the light after years of darkness. Her smile, her tiny hands, her very presence in our home fills our hearts in a way we can't even put into words. She is our blessing, and we already love her more than we ever thought possible. My husband and I have been completely wrapped up in caring for our baby girl. Every day with her feels new and special, and we've been soaking up every moment as a new family. Our families have been so excited to meet her. Everyone has been calling, texting, asking when they'll get the chance to see her in person. But since she's still so little and we've been extra cautious, we hadn't invited anyone over just yet. We were especially worried about her catching a cold or getting sick, so we've been taking every possible precaution. Now that she's a little bit stronger and we feel more confident as parents, my husband and I finally decided that it's time to bring our loved ones together. So this week we hosted a family luncheon and invited relatives from both sides. We were really looking forward to introducing our daughter to the people who have been cheering us on from the start. It felt like the perfect time to celebrate, not just her arrival, but everything we've been through to get here. While my side of the family was absolutely overjoyed to finally meet our baby daughter, I have to admit that the reaction from my husband's side was quite different and honestly a bit disappointing. Most of them were polite enough, but the enthusiasm just wasn't the same. What really bothered me, though, was the way my mother in law and sister in law behaved during the visit. Instead of simply welcoming our daughter with love, they kept asking questions that were invasive, insensitive, and completely inappropriate. They wanted to know, where is she from? And why is her skin so dark? One even asked, why couldn't you adopt a fairer baby? And the most upsetting one, who is her real father? Hearing those kinds of comments, especially from family, was painful and honestly made my blood boil. We didn't go through all the heartbreak, the waiting, and the long adoption process just to have our child questioned like that. She is our daughter in every way that matters. The color of her skin or the details of her background don't change that. The love we have for her is unconditional. We won't tolerate anyone treating her as anything less than fully part of our family. I gave my husband a sharp look, one that clearly said, please do something before I lose my patience. He caught on right away. Just from my expression, he knew I was reaching my limit. And without missing a beat, he stepped in and gently interrupted his mother and sister, trying to steer the conversation in a different direction. I appreciated that so much. I didn't want to cause a scene or start a fight, especially on a day that was supposed to be about love and celebration. This was the first time our family was meeting our daughter, and I wanted the moment to remain beautiful and positive. But despite his efforts, his mother and sister just wouldn't let it go. No matter how many times he changed the subject or tried to lighten the mood, they kept circling back to our daughter. It was like they were fixated, asking more questions, making comments, and clearly showing that they couldn't get past their own narrow views. It was frustrating, painful, and deeply upsetting. All we wanted was for our baby to be welcomed with open arms, not judged or picked apart by people who were supposed to love her simply because she's part of our family. At one point during the luncheon, my mother stood up to say a few words. She had been glowing with happiness all day, and you could see how proud and emotional she was. She began her speech by saying how overjoyed she felt to finally become a grandmother. Her voice was warm and full of gratitude. She spoke from the heart, saying how thankful she was for everything my husband and I had been through, and how our baby girl was already such a beautiful and cherished part of our family. As she spoke, everyone around the table listened with smiles on their faces. Some had tears in their eyes. When she finished, people clapped, raised their glasses, and joined in celebrating this meaningful moment with us. But then, right in the middle of the joy, my sister-in-law did something that completely shattered the mood. She let out a loud snort and shook her head in disbelief, clearly mocking what was being said. My mother, with grace and strength, chose to ignore it and kept going, determined not to let anything take away from the love in her words. Then, just as the room was filling with warmth and celebration, my sister-in-law suddenly blurted out, "Are you all being serious right now? We're actually congratulating them for adopting a random baby from a stranger? Please, there's absolutely nothing to appreciate here." Her words hit like a slap. The room fell silent. The joy, the unity, the love that had just filled the air, it all felt like it had been knocked down in an instant. My husband and I were stunned. Everyone was. I couldn't believe that someone in our own family could say something so cruel, so thoughtless, especially in front of our child and the people who love her. As if her first outburst wasn't enough, my sister-in-law kept going, clearly feeling bold and shameless. What shocked me even more was that My mother-in-law nodded along as if she silently agreed with every word. That silent approval hurt almost as much as the words themselves. Then, with no regard for anyone in the room or the little baby in my arms, my sister-in-law said something I will never forget. Am I the only one who thinks this baby is ugly? Like, she doesn't even look like us. My brother and his wife just adopted her because his wife didn't try hard enough to get pregnant on her own. Now they've destroyed our family bloodline by bringing someone else's child into our family. Her words were venomous, cruel, inhuman. It felt like she was trying to rip apart everything we had fought so hard to build, our family, our hope, and most painfully, the dignity of an innocent baby who had done nothing but exist and be loved. To speak about any child that way is appalling, but to say that in front of us in the middle of our family gathering was beyond unforgivable. At that point, I was no longer just hurt, I was furious. My entire body was shaking with rage. I couldn't take it anymore. This woman was sitting in our home, at our table, on a day meant to celebrate love and new beginnings, and she was insulting us, our choices, and worst of all, our child, over and over again like she had no filter, no heart, and no sense of decency. She spoke as though our daughter didn't deserve to exist in our family. She acted like we didn't deserve to be parents because our child didn't come from our blood. I could feel the anger rising like fire in my chest. And without even thinking, I stood up. I walked straight up to her. She was still talking, still spewing her vile words like a woman completely detached from reality. And then, without hesitation, I picked up my champagne glass and threw the entire contents right into her face. The room went silent. That finally shut her up. For the first time since she opened her mouth, she was speechless. She sat there stunned, dripping with champagne, while everyone stared in disbelief. And you know what? I didn't regret it, not one bit. Someone needed to put a stop to the hatred she was spreading. And if no one else was going to do it, I would. I then took a deep breath, and as calmly as I could manage in that moment, I looked her straight in the eye and said, "You have absolutely no right to speak about my infertility or judge our decision to adopt. You haven't lived our life. You haven't felt our pain, so don't you dare pretend to understand." I wanted to keep it at that, to speak my truth and walk away, but of course she didn't stop. Instead, she jumped up and started yelling about how I had disrespected her by throwing the champagne. She acted like she was the victim, as if she had been attacked without reason. Then, without any shame or empathy, she went even lower. She sneered and said, "You're probably just jealous of me. At least I can have my own children. That makes me better than you." That's when my husband exploded. He yelled at her to shut up, his voice echoing through the room. He was livid, not just as my partner, but as a father, a son, and a man who had just watched his wife and child be humiliated in his own home. But even then, sister-in-law didn't back down. She just stood there smirking like none of it mattered, like she had done nothing wrong. There was no apology, no shame, just that cold, smug expression that made it clear she had meant every word. By then, I realized my sister-in-law wasn't going to stop. She was relentless. And I knew that if I stayed quiet, the insults would keep coming, hurting me and my daughter even more. So in that moment of anger and frustration, I spoke up in a way I hadn't planned, but felt I had to. I looked her directly in the eye and said, "And who are you to call my baby ugly when you have children with two different fathers? One of them is in prison, and the other one has accused you of actually assaulting him after he got drunk at a party and you took advantage of him." The room went dead silent. Everyone was shocked, and I could feel every pair of eyes on us. I hadn't meant to drag our family's darkest secrets out into the open, but I needed her to understand just how unacceptable and cruel her comments were. When I spoke those words, my sister-in-law's mouth dropped open. What I had just said was like dropping a bomb because it was a secret that very few people knew about. It was something the family had tried desperately to keep quiet. Only my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and my husband had ever been trusted with this truth. I didn't know any of it until after I married my husband. It was one of those things he shared with me when he felt I needed to understand the full picture of the family and his past. For years, my sister-in-law has denied the accusations and tried to keep the truth buried, but she has always acted like she did nothing wrong. But the man who fathered her child has always maintained his side of the story. Just to note, that man has continued to deny paying any child support. In the past, when she threatened to take him to court to get what was owed to her, he fired back, saying he would expose her publicly for what she had done to him. Faced with that threat, she quickly backed down and gave up on trying to get child support altogether. This is why I have always been suspicious of her. Why would a mother who has every right to seek support for her child simply give up unless there was more to the story? I have had my doubts for a long time, but I never brought them up until this moment. As soon as I revealed everything, my sister-in-law couldn't keep her composure. She started spluttering, trying to deny what I had said, but her words came out in a chaotic mess, more like screams than anything coherent. The room grew tense, and people began turning to her, asking if what I said was true. It was clear no one expected her to respond. When she finally did, it was with more frustration and tears than any real denial. Without warning, she stormed out of the luncheon, screaming at me and bawling her eyes out. Almost immediately, my mother-in-law and father-in-law reacted with anger, shouting at me for being disrespectful to their daughter, accusing me of crossing the line. I couldn't believe the audacity after everything my sister-in-law had said and done. They were upset with me for telling the truth. Then, as if it wasn't enough, my mother-in-law asked my husband to talk some sense into me so I would never speak to his family like that again. But my husband stood his ground fiercely. He told his mother to back off and made it clear I hadn't said a single lie. He reminded them that if anyone needed to be spoken to about respect, it was his sister, for the way she had treated me and our daughter. His support meant everything in that moment. Frustrated and unable to argue further, my in-laws left in a huff, slamming the door behind them. The room felt heavy with tension and sadness after they left. But deep down, I knew we had stood up for what was right, our family, our daughter, and ourselves. Since that day at the luncheon, word has spread quickly through our family and beyond. Many of the relatives have started talking about my sister-in-law, and honestly, most of them are calling her out for the way she acted. People are gossiping about her cruel and hurtful behavior, her disrespectful comments about our baby and our family. It seems like the community around us is beginning to see the truth and standing with us, which has been a small comfort in all of this. But even as the family talks and judges her actions, my sister-in-law has not stopped. She keeps leaving me voicemails filled with angry, abusive messages. In these messages, she blames me for revealing that long-hidden family secret. She claims that because of my big mouth and what I said about her, she has lost all respect and support from her own family members. Hearing those hateful words from her has been exhausting and painful, but I've learned not to let them break me. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and father-in-law have taken a different stance. They believe that I owe my sister-in-law a public apology for what I said about her during the luncheon. They keep insisting that I should make peace by admitting I crossed a line, even though I spoke only the truth. But I have refused to apologize. I stand by what I said. I know I was defending my family, my daughter, and myself from unfair attacks. And I won't back down simply because some people want to avoid uncomfortable truths. Update 1. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you to everyone who has reached out, commented, and supported me after I shared what happened at our family luncheon. Your kind words truly meant a lot to me during a time when I was feeling overwhelmed, hurt, and honestly a bit lost. I've received a lot of DMs and comments with questions, so I thought I'd do an update to answer some of the most common ones. Question: do you regret exposing your sister-in-law's past like that? Answer: regret? No. Was it dramatic? Yes. Was it ugly? Absolutely. But do I regret standing up for my daughter and myself after being verbally attacked and humiliated in my own home? Not for a second. I kept that secret for years out of respect for my husband and his family. But the moment she decided to go after my child, an innocent baby, and mock me for not being able to conceive, she crossed a line I couldn't ignore. I didn't plan to say it. It wasn't revenge. It was me snapping after taking hit after hit. So no, I don't regret defending us. Question: why did your husband's family keep such a serious matter a secret? Answer: I asked the same thing when I first found out. According to my husband, it was something his parents wanted to keep quiet to protect the family name. They were embarrassed and thought pretending it never happened was better than addressing it. That's why only a few people ever knew. It's sad because this culture of silence is exactly why things fester and explode later on. Question: are you worried about legal action from your sister-in-law for what you revealed? Answer: not really. Nothing I said was false. Her child's father has said it himself, and it's the reason there's been no child support. There are messages, conversations, even legal threats exchanged between them in the past. If she tries to go down that road, she'd risk that all coming to light. She's angry I said it out loud, but she knows she can't legally touch me without dragging herself through worse. Question: did your sister-in-law's children hear what you said about her past? Answer: no, I would never do that. Her kids and even some of the other younger children were all outside playing in our backyard during the luncheon. They didn't hear a word of what was said. As much as I was hurt and angry, I would never drag innocent children into adult issues, especially not ones that could hurt their view of their own mother. Whatever my issues are with her, I wouldn't let her children become collateral damage. Question: how is your husband handling everything? Answer: he's been my rock. From the moment it all went down, he stood by me. He told his parents they had no right to expect me to stay quiet after how their daughter treated me. He's just as disgusted by his sister's behavior, and even though it hurts him to see the family tearing apart, he says protecting our family, our daughter, our home, is what matters most now. Question: will you ever apologize like your in-laws want you to? Answer: no. They want me to apologize for embarrassing their daughter, but they've shown zero concern for how she embarrassed, insulted, and attacked me and my baby. I won't apologize for telling the truth, especially when I was provoked in such an awful, public, and deliberate way. If anything, they owe us the apology. Question: how's your daughter doing? Answer: she's doing beautifully. She's happy, healthy, and loved beyond measure. She has no idea what's going on, which I'm grateful for. She doesn't deserve any of this tension or drama. All she knows is she's surrounded by people who adore her. And that's what I'm going to keep focusing on. Update 2. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, my sister-in-law has decided to take everything even further. Instead of backing down or reflecting on her own behavior, she's now taken to social media to continue attacking me and my husband. She made a Facebook post publicly calling me a liar and painting a completely false picture of our family. In her post, she claimed that our decision to adopt wasn't about love or desire to become parents. According to her, we only adopted so we could play the role of so-called white saviors, as if our daughter were just some accessory we picked up to boost our ego and look good to others. I can't believe that she twisted our most painful journey, one marked by years of heartbreak, loss, and emotional devastation, into something shallow and performative. Reading her words felt like being punched in the gut. This wasn't just an attack on me and my husband, it was an attack on our daughter, on our love for her, and on the family we fought so hard to build. It's one thing to lash out in private during a heated moment, but it's another thing entirely to go online and try to publicly humiliate us with such disgusting, unfounded accusations. We adopted because we had so much love to give and desperately wanted to be parents. Our daughter is not a symbol or a statement. She's our child and we love her with all our hearts. It's devastating that someone from our own family could twist something so pure into something so hateful, just to serve their own bitterness. My husband and I are absolutely furious. Of course, my sister-in-law wrote all those blatant lies as a form of revenge. She couldn't handle being held accountable for her actions at the luncheon, so now she's lashing out in the only way she knows how, by trying to publicly ruin our reputation. It's clear that her goal isn't just to hurt our feelings anymore. She wants to damage us. She wants to make us look unfit and unworthy in the eyes of others, as if it means putting our child's future at risk. Her lies, spread so publicly, could raise questions where there shouldn't be any. If someone in the adoption system or social services saw her accusations and didn't know the full context, it could lead to devastating consequences. The thought of losing our daughter, even for a moment, makes us sick to our stomachs. We're not taking this lightly. We're now seriously looking into legal options. What she's doing isn't just slander, it's potentially putting our family in danger. We can't just sit back and allow that to happen. We will do everything we can to protect our daughter, our family, and the truth. Update 3. It's been 2 months since everything first exploded, and sadly, things have only gotten worse for us. My sister-in-law has been relentless in her efforts to hurt us, emotionally and now even physically. After she made that outrageous and very public Facebook post accusing us of adopting our daughter for attention and ego, my husband and I had had enough. We warned her clearly and firmly that we would be taking legal action against her for defamation and emotional distress. The post wasn't just hurtful, it had the potential to damage our standing as adoptive parents and threaten our daughter's stability and safety. Realizing how serious we were, my in-laws, my mother-in-law and father-in-law finally stepped in. They begged her to take the post down, not because they were on our side, but because they knew it wouldn't look good for her if this went to court. They were more concerned with how it would affect her than with the fact that her lies were putting our daughter at risk. Eventually, and very reluctantly, she took the post down, but clearly she was still burning with rage, because that same night while we were sleeping, my sister-in-law decided to egg our house. Yes, she actually drove over to our home and threw eggs at our windows, our front door, and across our porch. It was childish, spiteful, and disturbing. It wasn't just a prank, it was intimidation. It was her way of saying, "I'm not done with you." My husband and I were stunned the next day. We stood outside our home, looking at the mess she made, and realized she wasn't going to stop until we made her. At that point, it wasn't just emotional abuse anymore. It was vandalism, harassment, a threat to our peace, our safety, and our sanity. My husband and I knew we had to take action. We didn't feel safe anymore in our own home. It was obvious her anger hadn't gone away. If anything, it was escalating. So we decided to install security cameras around our property to catch her in the act. And sure enough, just a week later, she came back. Caught in crystal clear footage, she returned to our home late at night, but this time it wasn't just eggs. She stomped through our front yard and kicked over several of my plant pots that I had carefully arranged outside our door, some of which I had been growing for years. She tore them down with zero hesitation. The footage showed her throwing things, screaming curses, and then storming off like she had made some kind of statement. It wasn't a cry for attention. It was pure destruction, deliberate, ugly, and malicious. We didn't wait. That very day, we called the police and handed over the footage. With that evidence, they had her arrested. To our surprise and honestly relief, my mother-in-law and father-in-law refused to bail her out. They didn't want to get involved, and I guess they were finally beginning to see the full scope of what sister-in-law had become. Whether it was guilt, shame, or just exhaustion, they stayed out of it entirely. Right now, we have spoken to a lawyer, and not only do we want my sister-in-law to face legal consequences for her actions, but we're also in the process of seeking a restraining order. This woman has made it her mission to try and destroy our peace, insult our daughter, and humiliate us at every turn. But she clearly underestimated us. We've reached our limit, and this time we are drawing a line that cannot be crossed. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationship.